coronavirus briefings should be going back to the people who are the scientists, and Mike Pence, who runs the coronavirus task force and who is on the conference calls with the governor. And perhaps that is the way they ought to be, rather than having the president at the podium dispensing rumor and false scientific information.
I want to bring in Jim Acosta, our chief White House correspondent. Jim, has that ever happened before? The president comes into the briefing room. It's supposed to be a news conference. He's supposed to answer questions and refuses to do so, simply walks out. By the way, Dr. Fauci was not there today. Dr. Birx was not there today. They simply refused to answer reporters' questions. It was very, very awkward.
It was very awkward, Wolf, and I don't think we've seen anything like this from the president during this coronavirus pandemic. He has appeared in the briefing room briefly from time to time and then ducked out again. But this is a whole different kind of experience, Wolf. And I think you're right on the money on this. This is a president who is feeling the heat big time after he made that outlandish, ridiculous comment yesterday that people could inject themselves potentially with household disinfectants as a cure for the coronavirus, and then tried to walk it back today by saying he was being sarcastic. That was obviously a lie. Earlier in the day, the White House press secretary put out a statement that didn't mention anything about sarcasm, just accused the press of taking things out of context. But I will tell you, Wolf, just a couple of things, just to put all of that to the side for the moment. I think the fact that Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx were not in this briefing today is important, and my colleague Kevin Liptak and I have been doing some reporting on this. The president has been making life difficult for the medical experts on the coronavirus task force. I can tell you, and Kevin can say from talking to our sources, that some of the experts on the task force are just very reluctant to publicly disagree with the president on camera. And some of this dynamic goes to the extent that, you know, there are times when these experts don't want to stand behind the president. They'd rather be off to the side of the room because they don't want the camera to pick up the expressions on their face when the president is making these sorts of comments. And you saw what happened yesterday in the briefing room as the president was talking about sunlight therapy and disinfectant therapy, all of which is hogwash. The camera, the cutaway camera on the side of the briefing room, was zooming in on Dr. Birx to get her reaction. I can tell you from talking to our sources, Wolf, the experts on this task force are highly aware of those cameras, and they're very concerned about their expressions being picked up. They don't want to be seen as publicly disagreeing with the president or perhaps laughing at the president when he makes these sorts of claims. And what you end up with, the end result of that, is a lot of the experts that the public is relying on can't really give the American people the truth because they're worried about the president lashing out at them or making some kind of scene that has to be cleaned up later. And to some extent, Wolf, it may just be better off for everybody that the press conference ended so early today, despite the fact that we would like to pepper the president with lots of questions. He wasn't given the opportunity today, or didn't take the opportunity today, to put out a lot of junk science and a lot of poppycock ideas that just aren't going to hold up when scientists take a look at it. So perhaps the public might have been spared in that respect, Wolf.
Yeah, it was only about 20 minutes that the president was there. Most of that time, Dr. Hahn was speaking, or the vice president was speaking. The president made a brief 5-minute opening statement that, as Gloria points out, that he simply read. Sanjay Gupta is with us. Sanjay, it's pretty extraordinary. Yesterday, 24 hours ago, these briefings sometimes go an hour, hour and a half, sometimes even more than 2 hours. This one was about 20 minutes. The president specifically suggested that potentially injecting some sort of disinfectant into your body might be a possible way to deal with coronavirus. And today, in an extraordinary development, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention put out a formal statement saying this, and I'll read it to you. Household cleaners and disinfectants can cause health problems when not used properly. Follow the instructions on the product label to ensure safe and effective use. On every one of these disinfectants, it says for external use only. It's not that. You don't have to be a brilliant scientist or doctor to understand. You don't inject this in your mouth. You just use it on your hands, and that's about it. It's pretty extraordinary that the CDC had to issue a statement today telling the American people, don't inject this in your body.
They were worried enough, Wolf, about this that people might, misinterpret and hear the comments that were made by the president and not, sort of immediately walked back by his scientific experts and maybe do something that's dangerous to themselves. So I think that's why the CDC did that. I guess manufacturers of some of these products also put out statements today. It's one of these things that I think most people already knew just in the bucket of common sense not to do this sort of stuff. I'm sure most people knew that, even kids knew that. But nevertheless, here we are having this conversation about this. Whereas there's really important stuff going on around this story in terms of these drug trials, vaccine trials, new developments in that area. I will say that over the past 24 hours, in addition to the shenanigans around injecting disinfectants, there was also now some new guidance from the FDA saying to slow down the roll on hydroxychloroquine, saying, right now there seems to be significant side effects with that medication. You may remember, Wolf, at one point the FDA said we're going to start trialing this, but we're also going to make it available off-label use for physicians to use as they see appropriate. Now the FDA is saying we'll continue the clinical trials, but based on side effects, based on the early data showing that there's not efficacy, effectiveness here, we're not suggesting people use this outside of a clinical trial anymore. And also these antibody kits, Wolf, there's been lots of tests that have come out onto the market. Understandably, there's a real rush to try and get some of these tests out there to improve testing overall for the virus as well as for antibodies. But many of them, Wolf, were not validated. They were not, showing accuracy that was high enough to give people confidence in those results. So you also heard the FDA commissioner talking about how they're going to improve the validation around these tests. So, significant things going on, but not overwhelming